tonight. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the approval of the agenda. A motion, please, to approve the agenda. Shelley and Linda, any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda? Motion is carried. Tonight we have several presentations, and I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Pullen to make those introductions.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Collier. So we're going to start with Mr. Hassel and one of our fantastic students from Leavenworth Middle School, Liam Hanshaw. So I'm going to ask that Scott come on up and introduce Liam, and then I believe Liam's got a few things he'd like to say to the board. Do you want to come up to them?
Check, check. There we go. Welcome, Liam. Liam is a hardworking, polite, and caring student, selfless, a good friend to everyone, and a role model to his peers, at least according to your teachers. Currently, he's taking accelerated math and science in 6th grade. He is also involved in chorus and rec basketball. And just as a side note, his brother Hunter was recently honored as Student of the Month for Rotary. So I don't know what's in the Hanshaw water, but if I could bring some home for my kids, that would be awesome. So, welcome up.
Liam, do you want to come over here so they can actually see you? Is that all right? You should go ahead and use mine, buddy. All good. You're okay. Say whatever you want. Do you want to just say hello and say a few things, or would you rather sit by mom? You want to sit by mom? Go ahead. Just talk to us from there. So Liam, if you'd like, you can actually have mom stand up there and she can help you read it. Would that be all right?
Or we
I'm Liam's mom. My name is Sam. He's a little nervous. He wrote the speech himself. He's been practicing it all week.
could do another presentation first.
First public speaking.
You're doing great. Don't worry about it.
All right. Do you want me to start? All right. So we started off with Hello, Board of Education.
My name is Liam Hanshaw. I am in 6th grade. A few things I love about middle school are the teachers, because they all help when you need it, and they are respectful. I love my ELA class because in my ELA class we read books that are interesting. Also, I love my math class because I'm in advanced math class where I am challenged every day. In school, I am a member of the student council and I participate in the LIFT program. Outside of school, I play rec basketball and soon baseball season will be starting. Myself and others would like to see a football team brought to NRW Middle School. I really enjoy playing football and I know my peers do too. I think we need more snow days or 2-hour delays if possible, when the weather is horrible. My overall experience at middle school has been great so far. I look forward to the rest of this year and then going on to 7th and 8th grade. Thank you for your time.
Liam, thank you so much. Just in case you wonder, we've all had this experience you went through, believe me, and we can relate. So good for you. But we're part of your school family, and we care about you, and we're awfully glad you were here. Thank you.
Fantastic job. So we're going to keep it moving right along. That's a tough act to follow. You know, we have Scott Wager from Expeditions of Empowerment to present, just to give the Board of Education and the community update where we are with our strategic action plan. So I'm going to introduce Scott, let him take over so that he can give you some information as to the process and where we are, and then we can speak a little bit about why we went in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Scott Wager. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Expeditions of Empowerment. This is an organization that's been around since 2017, helping to serve young people within our communities. I'm going to skip most of this because I know we have a tight agenda, but I want to at least let you know, at our core, Expeditions of Empowerment is really here to help people grow personally through outdoor adventure and emotional intelligence. We really focus our efforts on helping young people grow, specifically in self-awareness and independent thinking, because that really allows them to have control over their life trajectory. Beyond that, I'm going to skip this. You can read those slides and I'll get to the intent. I'm going to talk a little bit about the approach that we take to everything we do, whether that's helping young people develop emotional intelligence competencies or helping really effective teams make some tough decisions and move projects forward. It's a really simple process we follow that's based in emotional intelligence. It's really all about knowing yourself, knowing who you are, what you want, where you're trying to go, making some choices about how are you going to get there, what's your path forward, how do you want to be seen in the world, and then giving yourself, that actually gives you the opportunity to align your daily choices and actions and decisions to what uplifts you, what fulfills you, what moves you forward, and spend less time on the things that drain you and ultimately hold you back. This will come up later on, and that's the only reason that I'm touching upon it. Our relationship started through a summer workshop that, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that other than we facilitated a workshop for the administrative team. It was a really unique experience for us, very powerful, and there was some good connections and conversations that happened there. And that ultimately led to us being invited to come help the district develop, or not develop, but revise your strategic action plan to, from our perspective, the goal is to help align what the community's needs and desires and visions are with what the state's future visions are for upcoming graduates, and then come up with a strategic plan that's in a format and in language that resonates and can be understood by everybody. That's really the task as we see it. We started this in October with some focus group conversations and some surveys to see what does the community think about what's going great, what are the desires for future graduates, and what wishes do you have for the future, or for the educational system in the future. And then we brought all that information together with a large group meeting that meets on a monthly basis, the second Monday of every month. Usually from 5:30 to 7 right here in this room. And that group is really digesting all of that information and ultimately trying to figure out how we're going to revise the strategic action plan going forward. There's two things that I want to highlight from that came out, one very early in this process in November, and one that just came out actually on Monday. And that is that the values and the community promises that are in your existing strategic action plan really seem to resonate strongly with most everybody. The other thing that really came up, which just came up on Monday, is that there is a really strong desire that everybody seemed to agree upon, that the desire is for students coming through the North Rose-Wolcott school system to actually feel and experience what the district's vision and mission are. Rather than having them be able to read it and recite it and know what it says, they want them to feel it so they can just talk naturally about it, and it should hopefully mimic what that vision and mission are. So what we have heard from other people, and that they're working really well together and have the respect of the parents within the community. We heard that the transition plans between the schools and the vertical alignment of everything you're doing in the schools is one of the strengths that you have. Specifically in the elementary school, there was a lot of positive comment about how you've tried some new programs and stuck with them long enough that you're actually able to see results from them, and then taking that information and what's learned there and talking about it as students graduate up into the middle school, and that's helping everybody really be more successful. The other thing that we've heard, and I can actually attest to this, I've seen it in some of the work we're doing with your middle school students, is that your students are critical thinkers. That's one of the strengths that we have seen. Shifting to what are the desires or future desires for graduates, what we have heard there are that there's really 3 core areas that folks are interested in. One are the social skills that students leave when they, not leave with, but graduate with. The other is the mindset that they have. And then the third, of course, and that's not in any order of priority, is their administrative skills. On the social side of things, what has really come to rise is looking for students to graduate that are kind, that are compassionate, and that ultimately have the ability to resolve interpersonal conflicts that come up within their lives. On the mindset side of things, I thought this was actually one of the coolest. It resonated a lot with me. Looking for students to graduate who are proud of their educational experience, who are proud of their community, who are confident and optimistic, and who have their own understanding and their own vision of what goals they have for their own success. That was really resonated a lot with me. On the academic skills, one of the key things that came out is really looking for students that are able to express themselves, express their ideas in a variety of different ways and do so respectfully, that they know how to research information so they can be lifelong learners and they can always educate themselves whenever they need to. And really one of the core things, it should have been highlighted but I didn't do it, is that there's a real desire to maximize everybody's learning potential. So those are some of the things that we've really heard so far through this process. Our current focus, and by current I mean what we focused on last Monday, is how to take a look at knowing where we are from a district and where we're trying to go. So this, in the terms of our process, is the know yourself part of it. Where are we trying to go? And where are we today? So what we did for that is we had a lot of conversations about what are the strengths in the community, what are the desires that people have for the graduates, and then we overlaid that on what New York State has as a new portrait of a graduate. And there are 7 different elements to New York State's portrait. So we took everything we heard from the district, overlaid it onto that map to see, where do we think we are today? That did leave a lot of questions, so we dove a little bit deeper and we did an inventory to the best that people could come up with of all of the different programs that exist here in the district at all grade levels, and then mapped them onto those different 7 elements of New York State's portrait of a graduate. And what that produced is this triangle looking thing that you see here, and there's one of those triangles for each 7 elements, and we took all of those programs and then laid them out and stacked them on top of each other so you could see what's going on at the elementary school level, what's going on at the middle school level, what's going on at the high school level, which was really, really powerful. I don't have all of those triangular things here to share with you today, but we do have them. And then our next steps for this are really what I consider the hard work. This is choosing your path forward and choosing how are we going to communicate what the vision is and the actual strategic plan for how we're going to achieve that vision in a way that everybody can understand it. I wanted to take a little bit of an opportunity to share how we tie this emotional intelligence concept into this, and the choose yourself is a really good way to do that. So the consequential thinking aspect of choosing who you are is making those hard decisions of of all of the programs that I showed you here on this triangle, which ones are really effective, which ones are really impacting all of the students, and which ones are either maybe not so effective or they're really only impacting a small percentage of the students, and then deciding what do we prioritize on? What programs do we prioritize on, and at what grade level or what building level do we make those priorities, and how does that shift? That's actually a pretty hard job to do. We're asking the questions of how is that going to feel? If we make this progress, what's it going to feel like to all of you and all of us as administrators? What's it going to feel like to the students? What's it going to feel like within the community to try and make those best decisions? That part is navigating our emotions. We all come into things with assumptions on what we can do, what will work, what won't work, and that kind of clouds our picture of what we're willing to go forward with. So we have to be aware of that, sometimes check that a little bit. Sometimes we have to listen to it and say, yeah, there's a good reason that that doesn't feel right to me, and I should listen to that. So how do we do that? And then the last part is optimism. And I think this is actually one of the most important things, is really looking at, as you're going through the hard work, what are we excited about? What progress have we made? And then what other opportunities do we have to try and implement something that maybe is new, maybe it's a little bit scary, but what might happen if we do it? So that's how this all plays together. And ultimately the hope is that, I shouldn't say the hope, the plan is that by July we'll have a new strategic plan in place that can be actionable. I know I have spoken really fast because I'm trying to get through a lot of material, and I know you have a full agenda. So I will pause now and just ask if there are any questions from anybody.
Board members, any comments or questions or thoughts?
Just
Shelley?
that I am very interested to hear more about this. I wish there was a little more time. And wondering if, is there a possibility of a workshop or something to really become more familiar with this work?
The process or the product? Excuse me,
Well,
process or
I think
product?
not the process, but the product.
Yeah, so there, as Scott said, you know, we're still in the process of forming it. So the second Monday of each month, it's open, right? We're meeting in here in the LGI. We're happy to do that. I can give you an update, but I'm not quite sure what I would update you on. But as far as the adoption, you're going to see that before we adopt anything. So this is just like a process check for you all, just to say, hey, here's where we are to date, and try to give you an update. And as we get a little bit more toward the formation of the actual strategic action plan, you'll have access to that, and we'll present it to you just like we would in any other format. We'll give it to you the first time for a read, for you to review, ask questions, and then push it back to us for specifics. But yeah, I'm happy to give you a workshop on it, more in depth if the board would like that, to talk a little bit more about some of the things that he's referenced with respect to the survey, to the findings and the feedback. We're happy to do that. And it might even be something, if you guys can take the survey, you and Janine can work with Megan and Lori to kind of provide us with the overview, and I can
Sure.
provide them with that, just to say, here are the findings.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was the survey that we did last year? Are you using that?
We took some of that feedback from the survey last year for the culture and climate with the BOCES. Yep, we did take a portion of that. We've taken some things that they put a completely separate survey out, just the parents, community, and staff, just to say, tell us what you'd like. And then, you know, as we've said, we've had a large group start out, we've had a smaller group, and then they keep pushing it back out. And now, if you could go back a little bit, Scott, right there to that slide. So with the pyramids there, that was our work from the last session. So now the next steps are, now that we've framed it, we want to get more specific feedback from the users, meaning like the teachers and staff, to see what's appropriate or what we've omitted. Because what we did see is there's very clearly an intentional redundancy in some of the programs as we go up through the linear project. But there are some things, as he said, we may not be investing enough in. There may be some things that we've invested too much in, and then we got to kind of tease out. What do we want to keep? What do we want to get rid of? And what do we want to enhance? So those types of processes. But we can get you that information.
I'm just responding, Mike, just
Yep.
because this process is just so interesting. Maybe it's just my own interest, but it's a very interesting process
Yeah.
to work through goal setting and focusing on what's working and not working. So anyways, I
Yep.
don't want to take any more time.
Yep.
It might be interesting to know that when the committee was first formed, the board was invited if they wanted to participate. Although at that point there were no board members that could, Tina and I talked about whether we should attempt to represent the board at the meeting. And we decided that we really wanted this to come from the community, and that because Tina and I aren't particularly good at keeping our mouths shut and listen, we like to have a lot of input. We thought it might be better that we stay away and let them work on their own, rather than to be perceived as trying to influence the committee. And so that was what happened on our end of things.
Well, and to speak to that point, there was one meeting where I abstained from it so that they could speak freely as well. Because we want this to be both authentic and organic, and let people speak freely so that there's no feeling of, oh, there's administrative influence, it's a top-down decision, this is all just smoke and mirrors. And that's probably why, with respect to Scott and his team receiving the RFP and being awarded it, is because it's not your typical education jargon, and it's not your typical scripted, here's your canned approach. And that's truly what I think our community deserves, is that you're going to peel back things and look at it in a very different lens. Scott's an engineer by trade before he founded this organization, and that was something that I think going through the process that we really valued, is like there's a structural component that we needed, but there's also a benefit to saying this is coming outside of the education world so that it's authentic. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Very much, thank you.
So the next presentation, Mr. Blankenberg's going to be presenting. The board had requested an update on some combined teams, what a regional participation might look like. As you're aware, there have been a few requests for combined teams, and last year we had a presentation about our athletic programs. This year, we're going to dive a little deeper into what those requests look like and give the board some information. So tonight he's going to give an overview on things, and he's going to reference one particular sport, but you could replace the name of the sport tonight and insert any other sport, because really when it comes down to it, in the day and age we're in, there's a lot of districts out there that are looking at creative ways to figure out whether we can share student athletes, whether we can combine for teams, and whether we can participate to benefit more. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark and let him get started.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some information with you tonight. Before we delve into some participation data, we had a sectional champion yesterday, Vivian Bishop, alpine skiing. She was the top finisher in giant slalom and slalom, and she's headed off to states. I mean, you've heard that name before, but she really did well yesterday. So congratulations to Vivian. We're very proud of her, and look forward to her going on and competing in states in 2 weeks. So one other quick good news update. Our winter scholar athlete teams, there is the list. We did well. 7 out of 8 were scholar athlete teams, so we're very pleased with that, and students did a great job in the first part of the second semester. So congrats. Let's get into some data. We're going to start showing you some high school participation by season. I guess the thing that I like to see there is it trends upward. We got a pretty good trend upward, especially in the fall. Fall is our heaviest participation season, and I'll show you that in another slide. We're down a little bit this past fall. You know, we're not exactly sure why, but you know, class sizes are a little smaller coming in. So, but overall good participation. High school by season or by year. That was by season, which you just saw. This is by year. So again, nice trend upward for our participation. And obviously this year we're not finished with the spring yet, so that bar graph at the end will jump up. Modified, our 7th and 8th grade. Again, good participation. Those trends are upward. Again, fall is our heaviest participation, but our winter has continued to be strong. You know, and then by year also, again, trending upwards, which is really good. We're pleased to see that participation rate. My personal target is 40%. If you get 40% of a grade participating in interscholastics, or 40% overall, you're going to be in good shape to fill out your teams. This past fall, we had 51 and 49, so at our modified levels. So those are some really good participation. You know, we're not quite at that 40% mark that I like at the high school, but 39 and 30% are a good target for those seasons. Did a survey of our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students and just listed things that we currently have, and we had a spot for other in each season. And as you can see with our girls, the highlights were the team sports. Soccer, volleyball, basketball was strong, softball, and outdoor track were strong, but flag football is something that is kind of the fastest growing sport in our area in Section 5, and we had a few of our middle school students had indicated they might be interested in that. Sliding over the boys in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, again, very similar to the girls. The team sports were heavily favored. Soccer, basketball, baseball, but you know, obviously wrestling had some good participation. But one thing that popped up was football. There was about 11 students in those grades who said during that survey that they were interested in football. Our levels. So here are sports where we have 3 levels. So a modified, JV, and varsity. And one of the things that we feel important is being able to fill each of those levels. That's where I would say a sport program is healthy when you can say we've got enough students for a modified, enough students for JV, enough students for varsity. And again, I would say, you know, using kind of an academic analogy, we would not really want to take a 9th grader and put them in 11th and 12th grade math. You know, why? Like a JV program is important for them athletically, you know, their appropriate level. In the academic world, it's important too. So the health is important, and I've kind of got some numbers there. Those numbers aren't going to mean a lot to you, but they mean something to me. It kind of shows the health of our teams going forward, at least for next year. We're in pretty good shape. The 2 teams that might struggle to maintain those 3 levels would be boys volleyball and softball. So I've kind of indicated those at the bottom. Our 2-level sports, and that's based on our league. Our league structure with certain sports, cross country, tennis is a 2-level sport. Swimming, track and field, those are 2-level sports. And then we've got some other sports that are single level, varsity only. Indoor track, bowling, alpine skiing, which we're combined with SOTUS for that. But again, like the health of those, you know, obviously is to have 2 levels. Going on to some potential combined team opportunities. I'm going to start at the bottom of the page, based on, you know, kind of the numbers that I've shared with you a little bit. Obviously, I mentioned softball and boys volleyball and swimming were some areas that, you know, if another school were interested, that may be something we may want to consider to maintain those levels, to give students those experiences. I'll pop up to the top. We've had some interest in football, not only from a parent standpoint, student standpoint, but from another school district in our area who's indicated that they're possibly interested in combining. Based on the survey, we had 11 students that were interested, and I put together some numbers. And combined teams, there's no real I'll say, direct formula to say if school A is going to combine with school B, how do you fund that? It may be the host school funds all of it. It may be some shared expenses between the two school districts. There's not a blueprint for that. Football, a little different. Football is an expensive sport based on the equipment needs and things, where schools that combine in football, they do a little bit more of a sharing of the funds. A lot of times what schools use is they take their football budget and they do a per student allocation. So I'm going to kind of talk through this real quick. Modified football, we did some estimates, and probably the best way to do it to make something like this be successful is provide transportation. You know, to say to folks, you've got to get your 7th or 8th grader over to another school district for a practice and bring them home. That could be challenging at 3 in the afternoon and 5 at night. So we've put together a budget that includes transportation, and the other piece is a coach. A lot of times, you know, whoever the host school is, those are the coaches. I guess where I've seen in my experiences where things are successful is that school that's combined with, that they provide a coach to help with the students and help with, you know, the interactions in school that day and knowing those students a little bit better. Moving forward, I've put down some numbers like, you know, if in the future, if we were to do something in a school where say, oh, we're going to combine in modified football, here's the number. I mean, the number is about $753 this year's money per student allocation. So that would be something we could expect as a, you know, if we're going to do something, here's possibly the bill. And then the varsity level, obviously that's a little bit higher, about $1,100, almost $1,200 per student. And again, going back to the bottom of the page, you know, some other combined opportunities that, and I guess I'll just say a combined team really helps when there's two entities that are in need. When there's one entity that needs something and there's another entity that doesn't, not all the times does that work as a successful piece. But you know, I think it works best when there's two groups in need. What questions can I answer?
Anyone have some? Linda, do you have something?
It's kind of going on the theme of regionalization to a certain extent, districts working with each other to promote and provide more opportunities for students. That's my only comment, because that's a current thing that's going on.
Towards the end of the last school year, I did share some data with you about the number of combined teams throughout the section. It is large, yeah.
Mark,
schools.
are you also looking at the number of students participating in our rec programs?
I didn't include any of that. I mean,
Right.
I mean, I can tell you that currently we have, I believe it's 13 of our North Rose-Wolcott students who participate in the Clyde Youth Program. I will tell you that our rec numbers, can't tell you exactly what they are, but they've exploded.
They have.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that's another piece to help us look at the whole as well. Okay.
So I realize, is my mic on? Okay, I think. I realize football is kind of the hot topic, the hot button here, right? But what other sports are we looking at combining? Is there something, I mean, I see these possibilities on the bottom.
It is really hard to say. I mean,
Okay.
what typically happens is, you know, it's almost, well, a lot of times an 11th hour situation. You know,
Yeah.
each school is, you know, at the start of the season, they're doing their sign-ups, and, oh, you know, we expected X to come out, but they've decided not to, and the neighboring school next to you is maybe in the same boat, you know, so there's not always, you know, to be able to say, okay, 2 years down the road, we want to, you know, work with these people to do this, and so unfortunately, it's a lot of times it's last minute type of stuff.
So now, is this specific schools? I mean, I feel like we're getting information, so sorry if I'm not, asking the wrong question. We have specific schools in mind. If we just pick one school, are we just doing one school? Or are we looking at options, like who are we going to work with?
So we don't have any set number of schools in mind. So as Mark said, it's typically, it's request driven.
Sure.
So there are requests that come from 3 or 4 different school districts. And, you know, we've been on the requesting end as well in the past and currently, so.
And it can be different sport to sport, right? It's not like you have to just pick one.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure I understood. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, a great example are some of our school districts in our league to the west end. I mean, they do several different combinations, you know, one sport it may be school A and B and then C and D for another sport. So yeah, there's nothing set.
And we can do like one sport, football with Clyde, and then that's it. We don't have to take students from anybody. Is it open across? It's what we decide.
Yeah, there's no, you know, if they take 5, they,
To that, so to clarify that, so I think what you're asking is, if we commit to sending students out, do we have to commit to sending or bringing students in?
Correct.
We don't. I mean, I think those are the types of agreements that typically get hashed out in detail, you know, before we bring anything to the board to approve. A few years ago, there were requests made to the board and there were requests that were denied. And so what we would say is anything that we want to do, we want to have our checks and balances, and we want to make sure it's very detail oriented so that we're not walking into a situation where we're suggesting we do something and then 3-4 months down the line we're pulling the plug on it. So we'll go into anything we do with sustainability in mind, knowing that it's an ever-changing enrollment in participation. So if you look at those numbers Mark presented to say, you know, 40% the target participation rate, and to look at our high school participation rate for fall and winter, we're down significantly. I mean, that's a trend that we have to analyze annually to make sure that we're being wise with our taxpayer resources and funds. But I do believe anything that we would present to you by season would be vetted and detail oriented, and certainly would have to meet your needs and the standard you have for us.
in a combined team, that's a year-to-year agreement. I mean, that goes through the section, and that's a year-to-year thing. So I mean, it's not a long-term.
And then the estimated costs on transportation, so that's bringing kids to Clyde and bringing them back, where like in our school, you stay after for sports, you get picked up. There's not transportation afterwards, so you're figuring both ways.
Both ways.
And now is that for games as well?
That'd be for the whole season, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we send a bus
Well,
to
for
their games?
no,
and
we'd
then
send a bus to the school, then they get on that
after
bus.
their game, when they return there, they'd get on our bus, come back to our school?
These questions are all details that we would have to work out, but yeah, your concept is right?
Okay.
So if we were gonna send student athletes out of district, but there are students that we would have to provide transportation to and from, and typically it's a 6-day-a-week venture, right? So you're doing the Monday through Friday for practices, and if game's on a Saturday, we're sending a bus out there too. And I think that that's one of the things that we have to really work on and flush out the details with, is what's it look like. Because if we were combined for wrestling, you know, there are some times where wrestling, if you go to a meet, you could leave here at 5 a.m. in the morning and return at 10 p.m. at night. You know, those are some things that we have to think about when you get to a varsity level. And for modified, you know, obviously the season's not as long and there's a lot less games, but those costs that we have to vet, and we're just trying to estimate as best as possible at this time.
John?
Mark, can you speak about the classification? Does the state mandate that, or is it Section 5 that does? And can you tell us what the implications are?
Sure, it's a statewide program. It's not just Section 5. Section 5 being part of the State Athletic Association, it's all in one. The modified level, the JV level, it does not affect. It affects the varsity level, and it you know, depending on those numbers, and actually the numbers fluctuate every year because the classification numbers are based on enrollment. So those numbers could fluctuate from one year to the next, but it typically, most times it would push from if you were a B1, or a B2 to a B1. So it may not push a whole letter higher, but it does affect it. But again, sectionals. I mean, people get worried about sectionals. To me, I think it's something important to, can you compete for a league title? And sectionals is a one-game season. I mean, you've got, your whole league schedule is more important at times.
And that would change the class for across all the
No,
sports?
no,
or
it would just be for that particular sport.
For
Yeah,
that sport.
It has no effect on anything else.
So it's information sharing at this point. I mean, obviously, this is the first you're hearing it. It's a continuation of what you had requested last year, and it's a continuation of what you had requested earlier in the year. So I think as you look through the materials, you have more questions. If you want to provide me with some feedback, or if you want to provide Mark with some feedback, or give us a direction as to what you want to have happen next, certainly we can, have that conversation. At this point in time, with respect to our spring season, we're not combining for anything at this point in time. And the reason being is because we've had to say no to some school districts earlier in the year. And in fairness and the spirit of transparency to others, we're not just going to say, hey, we're picking and choosing who we're partnering with. We're basically saying at this point in time, until we know exactly what direction we're heading in with respect to combined team or sharing student athletes, we've put a pause on it so that we can actually get feedback from you guys, see where you want to go, because I don't want to get into a situation where we were a few years ago, where it comes down to a decision, we move forward, and then all of a sudden the rug's pulled out from under us at the end. And that happened. So we're using that recent history with past agreement that, like I said, got approved by our board and then pulled. We don't want to go down that path again.
Mark, is there there must be a minimum number of students for different sports that you have to have a team. And I'm wondering if you had enough students on the team, would a school district want to accept students from another school, or two, beyond what they need, because it would push them into another level at, for the league. And if you need students, and let's say you accept students from two different schools, then the population or the student numbers of all three are added together?
Correct.
Wow. Even though you still may have just a minimum number on the team.
Right, it's a percentage. I mean, it's like the first school is 100%, the second school is a lesser percentage, and the third school is less. I mean, the whole reason combined teams, that program was established, was to give students opportunities where two, individual school districts didn't have either the funding and or the students to do it. I mean, that's the essence of the program. I guess a good example, just recently, schools in a wrestling league, one school wasn't going to have enough students to have a season. They had a couple seniors. They knocked on their neighbor's door who didn't need any students, but they were gracious enough to take them. So all the situation, it really depends on every situation. There's not, here's how this happens or doesn't happen. It's really school to school and situation to situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
And-
you
and
very
Mark-
much. It's much clearer to me now.
Is that a year-by-year decision? I mean, it could change from this year to next year, or, and who makes that decision?
Whether teams combine or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's between the two schools. I mean, obviously both need to say, the yes word and make it happen. I mean, obviously if one's like, let's do it, and the other one is not, I mean, it's not going to be successful. But it still is year to year. I'll say East Rochester going on to football, that's a 20-plus year relationship. That needs to be approved every year by the league and by the section before it happens.
And you say the school approves it. That's a quotation around the word school.
Sure.
Who is the school?
Sure. Well, typically what happens is AD from there calls AD from here, and we say, hey, we've got a situation, right? And then you start talking about it, and obviously then if it sounds like it's something that's could be beneficial for both schools, then you move that up the ladder at your school district.
So does this final decision rest with the superintendent?
Superintendent Board of Education. I mean, some schools do a little differently. I mean, some
Okay.
schools, the athletic director says yes, and it happens. Which isn't always good. I mean, I think, I think decisions like that need to, need to go through a process, not just two people saying yes to each other.
Thank you.
But it does go through a process at the league level. I mean, there's been some instances where schools have been accused of, forming a super team, two strong programs saying, oh, we, whatever reason why they're combining, we don't have the funds, and it's got, two really group of outstanding student athletes that come together. So, I mean, the league needs to approve it, and before that can go on to the section for approval. So there's some steps outside the school district saying yes to.
And anything we did would have to have board approval, because if we're gonna spend school district money, it's gotta be approved by you. So, to Mark's point, people might do it through a gentleman's agreement or a general person's agreement. If it expends money, our district will come to the board. All set?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark.
So moving on with our presentations, Mr. de Blasi's going to give a quick update on the budget process. This is something we start in November. We start looking at our numbers, start looking at our needs, and then, we bring the budget factors to the Board of Education and the community to tell you how we're going to frame out our school budget process for the academic year. So this year, recently the governor's put out her initial proposal, and I'm going to let Andrew go ahead and speak to some of that and give you a quick update as to where we are and where we might be heading.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my fans for coming out tonight. They must have heard I was presenting, so they filled the house for me. I feel a little bit like Liam, though. It's been a while. So budget guidelines, just for background, Gary and I have been working on this together, kind of giving me information of what happened last year, how we got to where we were. And so I went through his presentation, so some slides you'll see, and some are just good reminders of what we're going to do. And obviously the budget should be aligned with the Board of Ed goals, educationally and fiscally sound. The budget shall reflect prudent financial planning while balancing the needs of all students, instructional goals, improved technology, facilities, while minimizing the impact to taxpayers. So that's the guiding light we're going to use as we move forward. The goals: do what's best for students now and into the future, and be fiscally responsible in the process. And what we're trying to do is balance current needs with future needs. And part of your strategic planning when you're doing a budget is you got to understand the best time to put money into a savings account is when you have it, not when you need it. So this district's done a great job of looking forward and preparing for the future, and part of that is funding your reserves. So you have to have a strategy on how you're going to move forward and utilize those reserves and replenish those reserves. We want to try to minimize the budget-to-budget increase, obviously, stay within the tax cap limit, and that decision is ultimately up to the Board of Education. maintain programming, and maintain our bus replacement schedule, and continue our capital outlay projects. Although they're only $100,000 a year, they're very helpful for districts and they're aided in the subsequent year, so they're an important strategy to keep your facilities up. Governor's aid proposal, that's our first challenge. Minimum foundation aid increase 2% or $300,000 to us. When you're talking $37 million budget, $300,000 doesn't go very far. So that's not, it could be worse, I've seen it worse, but it's not as helpful as we need it to be. Contractual increases, retirement rates. The retirement rate for TRS actually went down a little bit, but you got to remember that number is being placed on more salaries. So it's still an incremental increase, but not the increase we've seen in the past sometimes when they jump percentage points. And health insurance rates. Blue Point's going up 10, Healthy Blue's going up 12, and that's kind of like a composite increase of 11.33 for our flash insurance. So that's getting expensive. I said 25 years ago we should just go 10% a year and never look back, and they haven't done that. So it's constantly going up and down. Collaborative budget process. We work with our stakeholders, consider all the budget factors, like we said, governor's proposal, what we think the market's going to do. We've got word that utilities are going to be going up drastically in the future, but we haven't seen it yet. But that's the report that's getting back to us. And obviously we need to have a balanced budget. We can't go out there without one. The budget formula, tax cap and state aid revenues, inflation. CPI is 2.95, but for our tax cap, it's capped at 2% for the inflationary number. Contractual increases, health insurance and other costs, and that's the unfortunate solution to that problem is a projected shortfall. So I present the budget. It's a little different than what you may have seen in the past. I kind of look at revenue projection 1 because things are going to change as we move down the line. So this is the information we have now. I'm presenting you with it. And it's important to understand a lot of these are categorical aids, expense-driven aids that are based, will drive what aid you get in the following year. So based on what we spend this year will impact that aid projection for next year. A few things. Governor's proposal, the numbers in green, I say are going to be a little higher than what the governor proposed, right? Because they're working on old data. They don't know what we know about what we're going to spend this year and what we should be getting back. So the first one's building aid, because we're expected to go out with a bond. What do we got? A bond. We're going to bond some current bands, which is funding source for our capital projects. So we know we're going to have a debt service payment next year. The state doesn't necessarily know that yet. So their number for building aid was lower than what we think it is, and we get that number from our financial advisors, fiscal advisors. Transportation aid, my number's a little lower. What I said was, hey, we're spending about what we spent this year, or excuse me, this year we're spending about the same amount we spent last year, so the aid should be relatively the same. Governor's proposal had us going up way a lot in transportation, which is not uncommon. They do it every year because they're basing your estimation for aid based on your budgeted amounts in your transportation. Well, we don't always spend everything we budget, so we can't expect the aid for everything we budget. So I always adjust that number. Governor was actually a little lower on our private and public excess cost. Again, they don't know what students we have and what programs we do. I'm a little more willing to go a little higher than they were. And the same for BOCE's aid. Again, we're spending about the same this year as we did last year, so our aid's going to be in line with what it was in previous years. Don't know the real answer till the end of the year. But that's, again, this is a budget. So that's our state sources, and if you can see, it's going up 4.5%, but again, most of that's driven by building aid. But you got to understand, we're going to get more building aid, but we're going to have more building-related expense next year. The local sources. based on the picture we saw, first of all, I don't assume a tax levy increase till we've had conversations, so I don't put it in revenue projection number 1. I leave it out. But one thing we did come to the conclusion on, one, our interest and earnings are better than current budget. But we got to be careful because we don't know what interest rates are going to do next year. So I'm willing to go a little higher on our projected interest and earnings, and it's a number we'll continue to look at as we move down this path on creating a balanced budget. But for now, I say, you know what? We got to go a little more on interest and earnings. Since when I started this business, you used to be very conservative on your expenses and you guessed low on your revenues, right? And that's how you created fund balance. Those times are over. Like, we're trying to get really tight, get really accurate with our revenue number. We're trying to get really accurate with our appropriations number. So one thing you'll see there is the use of reserves. At the end of this year, we expect to be able to refund some of the reserves that we use, but based on the early picture of the governor's proposal and the inflationary costs and our contractual increases, we're expecting that we're going to probably need to use the same amount of reserves next year. And this is something we got to monitor. We got to make sure, A, we have the funds in the reserves, which we do, and we don't want to get stuck in a pattern where we're always going to the reserves, because at some point your savings account runs out. So you got to be very strategic. But based on the model we're seeing right now from the state, we're like, all right, we kind of need to use this again. We reduced the interfund debt service. That has about $2 million in that account. We reduced it a little bit because the strategy, Gary said, when he implemented it last year, was we're going to try to wean off of that one faster than the rest. So that's kind of where we're at. That number, we may decide to move that up based on what we see, based on the impact it could have on us. So what I did was I went back through your history, tax levy history, and I put it here on a chart. And what I'm going to assume, and what I believe, is that the best decisions were made with the information people had. It's okay, I'm used to clearing a room out when I start talking budget. So we got to trust the decisions that were made. So I'm not second guess what was done, right? That was the best decision they made with the information they had at that time. And we're going to do the same thing. The only thing we want to do is we want to make sure that you completely understand when you make a decision now, it will impact you 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. So I kind of wanted to illustrate that with this chart. What I did was I assumed the years you went negative, I put in, well, what if the district did 0% tax levy increase? And the years they went negative, I said, well, let's assume, or excuse me, the years they were at 0, I said, what if they just did 1% tax levy increase? Just for the understanding again, how does our decisions today impact what's going to happen to us in the future? So if you can see down at the bottom, I assume for this 25, 26, I just for argument's sake, I said, let's say we did 2%. Tax, you know, everybody thinks of the tax cap as 2%. We'll calculate our own, but that's kind of what the governor has put in everybody's mind. So if you looked, and just for illustration, the projected tax cap could get us another $1 million had we just made those minor changes 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But again, we don't know what they knew at the time, and again, I trust that they made great decisions. But it's just an illustration of just a little bit of decision making now will affect what happens in the future. So that kind of would really make things better if we had it now. So revenue projection 1, I have my state sources and my local sources, and we're at 36.5. So that's our revenue. Revenue drives what we do, right? Because we can't spend more than we get. So revenue is the driver of what our budget's going to be. First exercise, we do a maintenance-based budget, which I'm going to roll forward all our current programs, all our current personnel, a lot of assumptions. And the superintendent warned me about assuming, but we had to do some assumptions to get to a starting point. So that's what we did with a maintenance-based budget. So it's at 37,783. Adopted budget this year is 35,489 and change. Give you a budget increase of $2.3 million or 6.46%. Seems reasonable to me. What's that increase? Well, it's pretty simple. contractual living salaries, benefits, debt service, and we're at our 2.3. So we did some minor manipulation of other numbers, lowering, increasing based on historical trend of spend to get to where we are now. So we're looking at those major increases. And again, we're a people business. We ain't getting anywhere on papers and pencils and pens and markers. It's about people, and that's why you're going to see the costs are related to people. So balanced budget, not yet. We have a maintenance-based budget at 37.7. Revenue projection number 1, again, absent any tax levy increase, gives us a projected shortfall of $1.2 million. Not uncommon, understandable, seen it before. Options to address the shortfall. Easy one, decrease appropriations, right? Lower expenses. Increase revenue. This one's a little harder, but it's an option. State aid, other sources, grants, or taxes. That's how you increase your revenue. I like to keep my presentations really simple. More so for me than it is for you. Next steps. We got to lobby Albany. Superintendent was just down there on Tuesday or Wednesday. We got to get them to understand high need rural districts need more in foundation aid. We're very dependent on state aid to balance our budgets, to operate. Most of our revenue comes from state aid. So when they say we're only going to give you 2%, that's not going to help us, right? A district that can get 2% on 80% of their revenue because they're highly taxed and they don't get a lot of state aid, they can go a lot farther than we can. We got to identify budget reductions. We're doing that. We're meeting with the schools. We're meeting with the principals. We're looking at what we can do. We're looking at right sizing, make sure we got the right number of people in the right places. Review all revenue sources. Again, I'm going to keep an eye on my estimates. I hate to say it, but the estimates could go down, they could go up. The hope is they go up as we continue to scrutinize what we have. And continue to identify grant opportunities. This district has really done a great job identifying those opportunities, and will continue to do so. Oh, there we go. Important dates. For you guys, the most important, I did tentatively scheduled a board workshop April 3rd, because on April 10th, the board needs to adopt a budget by law, and budget hearing May 8th, and our vote on May 20th. March 1st is my responsibility. I just got into the comptroller's site yesterday, so I'm feeling good. I'll get that calculated, and that's really important for us to have, important information for you to have. And Gary had this slide in there last year. I liked it, doing what's right for kids. That's why we're all here. I updated the photos. Thank you. Any questions?
I did notice that on revenue projection here, number 1, the real property tax number stayed the same from last year to this year.
Yep.
That probably will increase as a total.
I would expect, but I don't want to make that assumption for the
right.
board.
Do we have any of the towns who are not at 100% val and they're undergoing the 3-year reval?
We haven't talked to any of them, but ideally with the equalization rate, that should get them up to their 100% number. Right. So if they do a reassessment, that number will go up, but we would expect their equalization rate to go down, or to go up also to 1%. So it's a little formula. And I have to remind everybody, because I've been through some tough times, been around a long time. We only control one part of the formula, and that's our tax levy.
Right. And
then the assessors control the assessment, and the state controls the equalization rate. So when those things start to get out of line, and then all of a sudden they correct, a lot of blame comes towards the school. But we got to make sure the amount of money we collect does not change, no matter what it does. How it gets divided changes, but the total amount we collect is the total amount we collect.
yeah. And people have to always realize just just because the school budget goes up a certain percentage does not mean that your taxes are going to go up that same percentage.
Correct.
It doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that.
No, it gets complicated. Hopefully, like one of the things we heard earlier, people need to be mindful and understanding and open to listening and learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Megan's going to come give her academic update. So you know we just completed our first semester. We're heading into second semester, so we want to kind of give the board and the community an update on first semester progress. Think you're going to see some things with respect to our fall and winter benchmarks, as well as quarterly data, and then any particular questions that you may have with respect to some of the stuff you see. Please either feel free to ask her as it comes up, or don't hesitate to ask at the end. And then this is the last presentation, but I know tonight has been a very worthy conversation from every aspect of what we do: budget, athletics, extracurriculars, and then certainly the reason why we're here, academics.
Thank you. All right, so earlier this year, we talked about our school improvement plans and really made a focus of making sure we're using multiple measures to see how our students are progressing. So we'll be looking at multiple measures of data here tonight. So here are our 4-year-olds. They were tested first in October and then in January. They are given one-on-one testing to see what they can do as far as naming the alphabet, reading their uppercase letters, lowercase, identifying numbers 1 through 10, and then counting. And you can see that in every area they've made some great progress from October to January. So next we'll look at kindergarten. Now kindergarten and first grade are still being assessed using Ames Web, where the older grades are using iReady. I've heard that these grades are very eager to switch to iReady because they really like the data that the older grades are getting for their students. But as of now, this is Ames Web. And you can see that the green are Tier 1, so those are students who are on track. Tier 2 is yellow, so students who are needing a little bit of extra support to be able to reach that goal. And then Tier 3 is red, so those are our neediest students who are really struggling the most. So you can see we really had a great decrease with our Tier 3 students, and we're moving in the right direction with the yellow and the green. Again, this is kindergarten with numeracy. We've seen huge growth here for our students who have moved into Tier 1. Stop me if you want me to, but there's so many graphs I want to keep going. So go ahead and stop me at any point. So first grade, you can see here for literacy, really another big decrease in the Tier 3 and an increase in Tier 1 as well. And then in numeracy, a great increase for students who have moved into Tier 1. So those were our Ames Web numbers. So this is iReady. These are a little bit easier to describe. The green is on grade level, yellow is 1 grade level below, and then red is 2 or more grade levels below. So you can see for second grade reading, we've cut the number of students in half that are at 2 or more grade levels below. They're moving in the right direction to the yellow and green where they're making progress. And then for math, you can see, again, the red is getting cut down, moving into the yellow, and then we anticipate by the spring, more of the yellows will be moving into the green.
That still is not real good, is it, in second grade?
No, to
The
have,
number of that are on grade level.
right. Yes, we would definitely want to see more.
Yeah. Was this typical in their kindergarten or their first grade year too? Do you recall?
I believe so. I believe they started out low, made some progress through the year, but still not a really high achieving cohort that we've seen so far. They haven't made that up yet. Right, it's just on this, yes, so this is one point. Yeah, just one data point looking at different skills in reading, so there are different areas that we look at to see progress as well. Okay, so for third grade, again, the movement from fall to winter is in the right direction with increasing on grade level students. And it's great, like you said, Cindy, to see that reduction in the red. However, that's still a lot of students that are in the red, so continuing to work towards those skills. So the students who you're seeing in the red through these charts, they are students who are getting Tier 3 intervention. So they are getting specific reading intervention with reading teachers to try to help them make up that growth. We're using iReady. The computer program is really helpful because it has an individualized path. So we're catching more of those one grade level below students, and on grade level, they're working at a path that's right at their level to help them continue to progress. Here's our third grade math. Beginning of the year, there were not any students on grade level according to this test. It has gone up. Obviously, we want to see a lot more by the end of the school year. It will be interesting for us too, because this is the first year we're using iReady at the elementary school, and we're seeing that iReady does correlate to state test scores better than AIMSweb did. So we'll have to see where the students end and what the state test scores look like to see if there is a correlation there. These are aligned to the state standards, so we'll see if that's an indicator.
Megan, is there any way to be looking at regression over summer months? Are we seeing any of that? It is on. It's on. There it's up. Any
So-
regression over summer months?
So we can look at, because when they leave school and take the end of that school year's iReady, and then they take the beginning of the next school year's iReady, it's not exactly the same measure, but we can see if they ended, you know, on grade level, and then when they get back here in the fall, they're, you know, on Tier 3, we know there's been a lot lost.
I wondered about that.
And then fourth grade reading. And fourth grade math. So again, everybody's moving in the right direction. Of course, we'd like to see it happen faster, but this is one measure we're using. We're looking at many other things like our SET tests when they get done with their reading groups to see if they really mastered being able to move on to the next set of reading levels. So this is just one specific way we measure, and they're looking at a lot of different ways to make sure that we're hitting upon reading, comprehension, writing, all of those pieces that this test doesn't necessarily hit upon.
Now, this is done via computer as well, correct?
It is, yes.
So I think the big piece for me is that, you know, Karen and her team are going to come back and present the follow-up for their school improvement plan. I think it'd be important for the side-by-side comparison, because what you're seeing right now is one standardized measure. And so it's specific to this particular process, and it's computer-based. So what I would say to you is, you know, we could say, yep, we're not satisfied with these scores, and we're not, but it's only one measure. So I think, Karen, when you present in the school improvement plan, I'd like to see the side-by-side comparison, because you actually had a chance to witness what the students were doing last month when we visited the school. And if we go back to that Monday through Friday versus paper and pen, or in this case, computer and stylus test, you know, we've got to keep that in mind as well, because it's a lot for a student to do. But I would really put more stock in their reading level and then their math fluency, so that we keep that multiple measure mindset in the back of our mind. Because when you go into this middle school data that's next, that's the multiple measures that you're going to start to see, which we don't have that here currently for the elementary.
Megan, with the iReady, do I assume that if in a grade level, students are expected to be on grade level at this point, at the end of the year, if you test in fall, you're testing to see if they're at this level, And then when you test in the winter, you're testing at this level?
Yes, yep. It's a progression of what they would think the skills would be throughout that grade level.
So, I think the board always has to remember that if you have students, if to be on grade level, that keeps progressing, and you have kids over here who are already behind, they not only, for the next testing, they not only to be on grade level, have to make, they have so much to make up, because they weren't they weren't on grade level in the first place. So they've got to make up the difference here. These kids are already moved on, and they've got to make up even more. That becomes very problematic for kids who have some problems reading or with numbers.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that students are still in class for that Tier 1 instruction, and when they're pulled up by an interventionist, that's actually trying to help them to accelerate their learning so they can try to get caught up.
Real tough.
So we're going to move on to 5th grade, so now we're into the middle school years. You'll see that as students get older, we don't see as much progress. That's why, we put so much stock into the early intervention with our preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade to make sure we're really trying to get kids what they need there. But again, things are improving for 5th grade reading, but still not where we want them to be. 5th grade math. And again, the children that are in the 2 more grade levels or below, they're also receiving a Tier 3 intervention right at their level to try to get them caught up. So when you compare the iReady data to the passing rate of 5th grade, it's really interesting because you can see we have a lot of students who are below grade level. However, 100% of them are passing their classes in 5th grade. So when you look at this first, like we said, this is one data point. When they're in their classrooms, they're looking at multiple data points. They're looking at participation, completion of tests, completion of classwork. They have the opportunity to redo things and correct things to show that they have learned the standards if at first they don't do quite well. So not every student has 100, but every student is at least 65 or above at this point in 5th grade. And then we do have the academic recognition starting in 5th grade. So you can see here students going from high honor or from honor roll right on up as far as how they are doing in their classes. Here's our 6th grade reading. Again, we jumped up about 10% for students who are reading on grade level, but still over half at the grade level who are not, who are 2 or more below, so there's a lot of work to do there. And math as well, improving. And then when we'll look at the passing rates for 6th grade, you can see again they're quite high for what they're doing in class, but it does not exactly correlate to what we're seeing as far as skill level on iReady. One thing that we have a really big focus on this year is grading with equity. So teachers are really trying different strategies to be able to have kids show what they know without it just being a testing format. If they get a 50 on a test, they have the opportunity to relearn those skills, take a similar test to show that they've learned it and improve their score. So once a student gets a score on something, it's not like, oh, you're done. It's let me reteach you, see if you can gain that skill, and then prove it. So that's why there's a lot more flexibility, I would say, in the students that are passing here than where they're doing for just those specific skill levels on iReady. And here's the academic recognition for 6th grade. Seventh grade reading. Started the year with 60%, 2 or more grade levels below. It's decreased a bit. and then 7th grade math. And then here's our passing rates. And our academic recognition. Eighth grade reading has also improved throughout the year, but not where we want it. And then 8th grade math. Here are our 8th grade passing rates. One thing that was an interesting reflection from some of the teachers we spoke to when looking at grades is multiple teachers realized that in the second quarter, they were putting their most difficult curriculum in that second quarter, and they didn't realize the other teachers in that grade in the other content areas were doing the same thing. So they're going to look at balancing that a little bit more, because if you're working through your most difficult thing in social studies and math, it can be quite a challenge to keep up on all of that. So that's something they're looking at and adjusting as they have their data meetings. And then here's the 8th grade academic recognition. Okay, so now we're on to 9th grade. As you can imagine, in 9th grade and 10th grade, kids are starting to not really enjoy taking iReady, sitting on on a computer, showing their skills. There's a lot of motivation that we try to do to get kids to do their best, but I don't think this is really representative of what we're seeing students do in the classroom. So we're going to keep on encouraging them. What we're using this more for is to see those students who definitely need the extra support. So we're looking at those students in the red, comparing it to how they did the year before, and making some groupings for smaller instruction to try to improve those skills. And there's the math as well. One thing to note is that iReady is really focusing on skills that the students have not gained as they've come up through. And for 9th and 10th grade, the skills that they're working on iReady aren't really aligned to the content of the classes they're taking in math. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there where they're in class every day, they're learning these things, and then they're taking this to see what skill level they're at. So unless they're really getting intense instruction from an interventionist on the skills, you know, we might not see it grow as much. However, we do want them focusing on the content of what's in their math classes. So looking at some more compensatory strategies for 9th and 10th graders if they're kids who struggle. Another piece is looking at once you hit 7th grade, students are able to use calculators. They use them quite a bit. And iReady, we did not know that other districts let their kids use calculators because it's the first time we've used it. So if this is nationally normed, we believe that if we have our students use calculators in the next round, we would see some improvement because students are learning that way. Here's a 10th grade. And then 10th grade math. So looking at the passing rates in high school, we've got it broken down by content area. You can see each of the main English classes there. Then we have our math. We go through social studies and science. Our midterms that students recently took were all aligned to state test regions questions, and were aligned to what they've learned as far as the first half of the year, what's been covered. And so we have a good understanding of what skills students have missed, what needs to be retaught moving forward before they kind of move on to the second half of the year. Here are our honor roll and above for quarter 1 and 2 at the high school. And then we recently had students take Regents. There's the January Regents offering for some of the tests. So for Algebra 1, I wanted to highlight that one. These are students who took the Algebra Regents in June and did not pass. So 48 students did not pass that. By having them be entered into an integrated algebra class this year, they have been focusing on those skills, trying to get to the standards to be able to show that they can pass the Regents. So we did get 29% of those 48 students to pass the Regents. Because it's an integrated algebra, we can take those students who have now passed the Algebra Regents, group them together, and focus on more of the geometry skills, which they need to get next. The students who have not passed obviously still need to continue to work on those algebra skills, and we'll retake that in June. Another one I'd like to focus on is English Language Arts. So our 11th graders who are taking that class, they've gone through half the school year. We have all of our 11th graders take that and challenge it to see how they can do. So 83 of our students took that. 61% of our students have passed that Regents. They don't need to take it in June. It's out of the way unless they are a student who wants to try to get a better grade on it. They do have the option to do that. So that's really narrowed down how many students need to focus on that Regents for June, even though they have many others. And the rest of the students or the tests are students who did not pass last year, so it was another attempt for them to try to pass the Regents. So we have been talking to you about our focus on restorative practices, and I'm happy to say all buildings have seen a decrease in referrals each month compared to last year's data, and our suspension numbers are really down. There's been a lot of work being put in at the classroom level, guiding peer conversations and teacher to student conversations to really repair any hurt feelings or damage that was done in a relationship, to try to get kids to kind of see how their actions affect other people and not always just have it be a punitive thing, because giving them a suspension doesn't really teach them much other than they get to miss school sometimes. And so we want to have that teaching piece that's aligned with it, and obviously still provide discipline for the most serious cases. And then our attendance rates have been pretty good for the first and second quarter, above 90% in each building for each quarter. So our next steps is, now that we're at this point in the year and we have that benchmark information, we're going to adjust our intervention groups to make sure that we have the correct kids getting the interventions that need it. Any students who moved up, we can take them out of those intensive interventions to make room for other kids that need it. We need to evaluate what standards need to be retaught based on midterm exam grades and Regents tests. We're going to continue to meet with our BOCES math specialist to dissect and improve our practices. So we have a math committee going at the elementary and at the high school level. Math is obviously a big weakness, and we're really focusing in on that to figure out what we can do to improve our practices to make sure students are meeting those standards. And then we're going to continue to develop and offer professional development in order to improve Tier 1 teaching practices. So looking at what is exactly happening in the classroom. Are we differentiating? Are we scaffolding? How can we make sure students are engaged? Some of those practices that are just best practices that we want to make sure teachers have in their toolkit. And then last thing, so our ESSA accountability status came out. It's the same as last year, so we need 3 years of data to move our status to a different spot. So same as last year, our elementary and high school are local support and improvement, which is the old good standing. So that means that locally we can do what we need to do in order to support those buildings. The state's not involved with them, anything like that. The middle school is still targeted support and improvement. So that means that this year we have created the SCEP. We are working on those goals and tracking data, having meetings with stakeholders on that, and we'll have to do that again next year. And then the district is a targeted district, and we have the DSIP for that. We'll be updating you on those plans in the coming months. Ooh, am I out of time? um, in the coming months, so you can see the progress we're making on both of those plans for the school and the district. That was a lot. Any questions you guys have?
So next time you give a report, I don't know how to say this. At the end of the year, we'll get the state test sometime in the future. So you'll get the results back of that, and you can put those results next to the iReadies
Yes.
to see where they really do correlate.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That will be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a wonder, really. So, because, as you've said, the Ames Web and the iReady are just benchmarks. It really is to help your teachers understand where the kids are functioning. But my wonder is, like, are there many staff members that look at these numbers and say, wow, I wouldn't think that one of the students is really in that 37, that they're really 2 grade levels below. That's not how they're functioning in the classroom.
Right.
So, I think that whenever we're benchmarking kids, it really is remembering that it's one data point.
Yes.
And I think we can look at this and think, oh my goodness. But it's just it is one data point, and it is a benchmark to help teachers.
Yes.
It isn't something our state assessments, we have to look at because that's what the state really looks at. But this is just to help our teachers align the students with what they need in the classroom. And then just the only other comment is I do think high school for the iReady, it's challenging. I mean, it's very rare that you see great results with iReady in high school because the kids just blow the test off. But anyway, that's just an observation.
Can I just speak to that real
That's an interesting comment.
Well, I think that that's something that we have to assess at the end of the year as well, as to whether we use it more specific to a very limited population because the numbers get skewed. And then I appreciate the statement about the data point and the fact that it's only one. Really, when it comes down to it, this data is good for us because, again, it's acclimating our children with the computer-based testing as well. I mean, so for me, the multiple steps that they have to remember when they're taking an iReady at the elementary and the class that we created to prep them for that, that's all skill-based. Yeah, it's all helpful. And I do agree with you. I do think our staff look at the data and say it's not a true reflection of the learners. If you think back to what we had said to you previously, that 72% of our kindergartners are reading sets by November, that's really more in line with the Monday through Friday instruction, and that's really truly coming down to our teachers knowing our children. And that's the piece. So we will give you the side-by-side just so that you can see it, and then those wonders, we will continue to compile those because we always assess that as well. And to the other areas that Megan talked about with the multiple sets, I want to make sure that there isn't grade inflation going on with our quarterly grades as well, because we don't want to get walloped when we're looking at a state standard. So the iReady and Ames Web national norm, and we want to make sure that our standard is higher than what the state expects, not the opposite. We don't want to inflate our grades locally and then get slammed when it comes down to a state assessment, because I think that's setting us all up for failure.
It is. But I guess just for some students who, I mean, we have to go by the state assessment, so I'm kind of eating my words here. But for some kids, the most important thing we can do is to make sure that if they didn't learn it, that we're going to reteach it. And one test does not always reflect what a student knows and can apply. So, I mean, I think a couple years ago I was in a different mindset, but just in reflecting on, everything is based on a state test. And I think we have to be cautious of that with our students and allow them different ways. So I think the changing of the graduation requirements are so important.
It's a perfect segue back to the strategic action plan, honestly, because I think that that's the point that we're trying to make is the portrait of a graduate and how will we measure student success for our children here. So what's that mean? So I couldn't agree with you more.
In the piece that you said about teachers looking at the data and saying, that doesn't really match, there's, Mr. Pullen, since he's come, has had us have teachers look at data memos. And so we give them their data, they go through and they reflect on how their students are progressing. And they really put in some different, like some deep thought about like what instructional practices helped. You know, what has been hindering it? How can I improve it for this student? So they really are thinking about that and using those multiple sources to try to target each student.
And I wonder if the students who were in the red and the yellow were to take the very same test, paper and pencil, instead of computer, how they would do. How much does this test really reflect an inability to function on those computers, especially in math? That boggles my mind. With our kids who aren't at grade level at the end of the year, are we offering them summer school?
We have certain students who we recommend strongly for them to come so they can get caught up. In the past, we've been able to open it to almost any student who's wanted to come based on, you know, funding. We'll see what we can do with that, but we definitely try to offer it for students who we've seen struggle, who we can get to come in and try to give them some of that extra work, along with some fun stuff too, since it's summer, but they definitely have a math and an ELA focus when they come in.
Because Tina was alluding to that same thing, you know, and for the kid who was behind, catching up and moving on is you know, impossible. I mean, you wouldn't expect a runner to do that, who's way behind.
And one thing we do make sure is that we celebrate growth. So students who show improvement, they get celebrated just as much as students who are on grade level and have stayed on grade level when we look at these assessments, because the kids do use this information to set little goals for themselves to try to do better. So we try to make sure like any growth is celebrated, because it's hard for them when they see if they're not on grade level.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, I would like to make a change in the agenda, if you wouldn't mind. I know there are people here who wanted public access to the board, and they've been here an hour and a half waiting. I wonder if we could do the public access now and then do our reports and correspondence. Would that be all right with you? And then they can get home and get their kids to bed or whatever. So Tina, we do have people for public access, do we? Unless they all gave up and went home. While she's coming up, when we do have people here for public participation, I read this. I'm required to read this. Public participation is a time that the board has set aside to hear from residents of the district to express viewpoints related to the district. Our bylaws establish the rules for this public access, and if you have signed up to speak, it is expected that you have read the policy and are committing to adhere to the policy rules. I do remind you that the board does not hear personal complaints against any persons connected to the school system in public session, nor are any forms of prejudice, obscene language, liable statements, or threats of violence tolerated. Public access is a time for the board to hear what residents have to say, but members do not respond in any way. Speakers are each allowed 3 minutes, and when you hear the signal from Tina, please come to a conclusion. Thank you. Our first public speaker is Robert Patarelli. Is that how I say that? All right. Robert, would you like to come to the podium?
My name is Robert Patarelli, and I'm involved with the Clyde Savannah Youth Football and Cheerleading League since 1991. I also live here in Wolcott. My son went through the program here. Myself, I am also on the National Football Foundation and College Hall of Fame Executive Board. I am also one of the founding members of the Finger Lakes Youth Football and Cheerleading League, and I'm the only original executive board member that's still on it. I think that the Clyde Savannah organization would love to have the North Rose-Wolcott people involved with them, and I think it would really be great for the North Rose-Wolcott students. The National Football Foundation and College Hall of Fame honors graduating seniors and also football players and cheerleaders. We have at RIT Convention Center in Rochester, we have probably about 300 to 400 people there that we honor. We also honor the youth. And when we do honor them, they get scholarship money. We go out and get scholarship money for them for college. I think this would be a great benefit for the North Rose-Wolcott people also. And we also, their names would be inscribed in the College Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. And their names would be inscribed in our plaque that we have at the Rochester Airport. And I think it would be great. I think it would be great for both schools, really. I know many years ago that it's been tried to have youth football here before. The Raleigh family tried. They didn't get it, was voted down. And I just think it's time. There's so many kids from North Rose-Wolcott that have been in the Clyde Savannah organization. And I know Manley has a wrestling organization, and he asks his kids to come to Clyde Savannah because to keep them in shape and ready for the wrestling season. So that's really all I have to say. I just think it would be a benefit for both schools, and I would love to see it happen. And myself, personally, I've moved here. I've been here since 1984. I moved here from Canastota, New York, and I really love the area up here. And I would do anything possible to get these youth off the streets and into a program, sports, any sports, in both schools. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Robert. Joe DeAngelis.
Thanks for modifying the agenda, so say that. So I'm Joe DeAngelis, resident of Wolcott, and I'm currently a football coach at Clyde Savannah, a volunteer coach. I've been involved for 15 years with the youth program and the modified program and the varsity. And I just want to tell you that you get top of the line coaching, top of the line equipment. I mean, you guys know, somebody mentioned how expensive football is. You know, I might be wrong, $400 for a helmet. I mean, we go, and Pam Blackwood maybe can address that, but we spare no expense for the safety of the kids. So there should be no worries about, you know, football. It's a contact sport, obviously. Very, very, very physical, but, you know, like I say, great. You'll be in good hands down there. So we would, again, welcome the Wolcott kids to come down. And I really, I have a question too, as far as transportation. Are parents allowed to take kids to a practice? I mean, we're talking about, you know, finances and all that. I mean, is that, what is the protocol?
That would be part of the discussion.
Right. I mean, so that could be an option then, that could save. If it comes down to finances, I mean, that could be an option that parents, a group of parents could say, hey, we'll carpool, we'll take the kids down, you know. So that is an option then, right? And then number two, and I love soccer, don't get me wrong, I coached jet soccer for years, and nothing against soccer, because I love it, but it's kind of conjectural if we say that it's going to hurt our soccer program if we allow kids to, play football at Clyde. To me, it's just kind of a flimsy argument if it comes to that. So I hope it doesn't come to that, like, as a deciding factor, because that's, strictly conjectural. But thank you for your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And Scott Peters?
Good evening. My name is Scott Peters. I'm a resident of the town. I have two kids that are in the school. One's going to ninth grade next year. I coached the modified basketball boys this year. On the football topic, we're really pushing for it. I know transportation was tough with getting buses for modified games. So I talked to other schools that are combining sports with other sports now, with like Marion and Newark. They only transport one way. Parents have to pick them up after practice is over, like any other school. Any other practice you go to, you pick up your child after practice is done. So that would save a chunk of money. My other option to the board would be contract with Clyde. Clyde picked us up for modified basketball games that weren't even Clyde games, and took us to Lions, took us to Sodas. So we could contract with Clyde to have their bus come pick them up, take them over there. Only one way. You're saving a lot of money then. Equipment, I think Clyde already has all the equipment for the boys, so that's not even an expense the school has to look at. Coaching, I think coaching is already done by Clyde.
It would be North Rose-Wolcott too.
Okay, so you have one coach then. A couple coaches, so you're only looking at a couple $1,000s per season for a coach. I think we need to push. I know like a lot of people are hemming and hawing about soccer. Is it going to affect soccer? Is it going to affect soccer? Me, football has a lot more options in college. When you go to college, kids are going to say, oh, I can play football. I can go to college and play football now. Your chances of playing soccer somewheres and going on and moving on are pretty low. Football opens up a big window for college, a very big window. And I think that's what we need to look at, is not just, let's look at the big picture of where the education go for college. You might have a child in the school district says, oh, I don't want to go to college. Oh, wait, I can go play football? Now I can go play football and go to college now and play football in college. It'll entice them to get them to college, I think. That's what we need to look at. We just can't look at the money. Because Marion does it. I went to Marion. Marion's a very small school, 2 schools. They do it with Newark. Sodas does it with Lions. They pick up one way. So we can't look at the transportation issue because we can contract. We had the county come pick us up for modified basketball with a county bus. So there's options to get kids to other schools to play sports. We just can't look at got to open up the horizon and say the big picture and look at everything that we can do for the kids. We say it's all for the kids. Let's look at what we can do for the kids to extend their education, push them to college with football. That's all I got.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the requests for public participation tonight. You're welcome to stay if you'd like, but if you would like to leave, you can do that also. The board is going to move on with the agenda back to reports and correspondence. Leslie, do you have anything to report for the elementary school?
I do. There's been a lot of reporting today. So the elementary school actually just recently got to do their iReady. We obviously saw some of their scores. The 4th grade won as far as having the best growth, so they got the pizza party. The spelling bee happened this week. I tried to talk my kids into spelling bee. Didn't happen. Today is the 100th day of school. You look pretty good you look good. They said they dressed up like they were 100 years old today, so she looks like a great 100-year-old. The annual PE night will be on the 24th of February, and that happens at the high school. I've made the mistake of going to the high school or something and not realizing what was happening and what is going on here. And now I know what that event is. I did not know before, so I'm glad I know about it. I'll have to come and watch this time. 27th is the Cubby Club, and pretty impressive. I love the number for the choir. 54 students in the choir. Is that choir and band or just choir? That was just okay. That's what I thought. So that's amazing. I love that. Both those programs are growing, so I like to see that. The music and the music in school. It's just great. March 4th is going to be the information night for the UPK and kindergarten families. And so hopefully there will be a lot of people coming to find out what those programs can do for them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Travis, do you have anything from the middle school?
Miss Rupp would like to give a huge shout out to the students for doing a fantastic job taking their midterms. This was the first time that 5th and 6th graders took midterms. They did a great job. Students showed determination and resilience, and they're very proud. The second annual spelling bee was on Monday, the 10th. Students in grades 4 through 8 participated. The first place winner was Hunter Hanshaw, and second place went to Maddie Oler. Congratulations to both of them. Miss Groth and the secretary, Miss Bundy, were staff members of the month. The middle school quarter 2 assembly was held on Friday, will be held on Friday, February 14th for all students. Students will receive academic, attendance, and Cougar Pride Trade Awards. 163 students earned their Cougar Pride Pass. This represents over half of the students in the middle school. Students earn their Pride Pass for 85% or above grade point average, 85% or above attendance, and good behavior. Students with Pride Passes will earn special privileges and rewards. A big thank you to all the family members who attended the iReady ice cream celebration for any student who made growth or was on grade level on their iReady reading, math, winter benchmark. We had close to 200 students receive this incentive. And that's all I have.
Thank you. John, high school?
They've been very busy. And it's amazing that we're already into the second semester. It's seemingly impossible. This month, I'll read this paragraph because it's, this month we are excited to share with the community this year's musical production, Once Upon a Mattress. Our students have been working hard to prepare this amazing show, and students auditioned before Thanksgiving and have been working hard to create the set and memorize lines, rehearse songs and dances. They will bring to life a whimsical version of The Princess and the Pea. The performance will be given on February 27th at 5 p.m. That's for the senior citizens musical performance. And February 28th at 7 p.m., March 1st at 7, and March 2nd at 2 p.m. That's a highlight of North Rose-Wolcott. It always has been. It's just well done. Also, this month the students in grades, we've mentioned this already, and 9 and 10 took their winter iReady benchmark assessments, and over the next few weeks we'll celebrate by having an iReady ice cream and pizza party. I imagine they'll be thrilled to take that after taking iReady. The February challenge, and this I thought was fascinating. During the month of February, they're focusing on a month of no work owed. Students will get raffle tickets and have a chance to win some amazing prizes during the next forum. So I think that's a great idea. It's a reward for doing your work. And counselors are meeting with students in grades 9 through 11 individually over the next few weeks to discuss course selections for next year. That is the thing I find amazing, that we're in this far into the year and we're looking for next year already, which has to happen. A representative financial aid office at Cuca College met individually with many of our seniors to provide assistance in completing their financial aid FAFSA forms for college. And a very good, you talk about point of evaluation, 60%, almost 60% of our classes are planning to attend a 2 or 4 year college. The Golisano Institute for Business hosted several NRW students on February 6th at their Brighton campus, and they provided transportation and lunch along with a campus tour, information sessions, and presentations about AI tools in business and the current state of the economy and applied economics. That had to be really high-powered, I think. Students in health classes wrapped up a teen mental health first aid training this month, and our two psychologists, Mrs. Kant and social worker Cassini, facilitated the training. And they provide mental health aid to their peers, and they have found that in research indicating that teens have a preference for sharing their challenges with kids, their friends, which would be logical. The ELL program, in collaboration with City BOCES, welcomed a guest speaker on February 5th to speak on the topic of Follow Your Dreams. And this is a former migrant student who shared his educational and life journey with other students and other interested students. Fantastic. We've had some really, really good through the years, historically, migrant students who have done wonders here. So they've been very busy. Thank you.
I guess so. Shelley, do you have anything from Cougar Ops?
I do.
Okay.
Cougar Ops they've been busy reviewing mid-year student data, including grades, attendance, and behavior. And then they're working with the counseling office and Ms. Sinclair to adjust student schedules for the third quarter. They have many students entering the hub and credit recovery as we begin down the final stretch of the 2025 school year. One student is graduating this month who had been in credit recovery since fall, and also celebrated a student that graduated upon successfully passing their English Regents. I think we met that student when we were there. So congratulations, that's very exciting. They will be hosting a visit from Wayne Finger Lakes Leadership in March. I think we had heard about that. And they will tour the program, visit with students, and learn more about how the program can support students regionally. So, thank you.
Thank you. Busy times at school, I should say. Linda, do you have anything to report from Four County Board of Directors and the Legislative Committee?
I have something for both. Four County, of course, many of us attended an event last week and it was really good that we had someone there presenting with other superintendents. And there's a lot of positive things going on in terms of explaining what regionalization is and isn't was really important because it's been so misunderstood. Just the term has been misunderstood, that it really is not about encouraging districts to merge. It's really about using resources with each other and planning to help our students when one district is not able to do something. By combining supports and agreements, we can move forward together. And the next thing coming up, of course, for Four County is the spring conference, March 21st, which we're all looking forward to. That'll be a great day. And Four County is also working for the 50-year celebration that we're going to be having. It'll be quite festive. That's May 15th. There'll be more details that I can report in coming months about that. In terms of Legislative Committee, Mr. Pullen and I were both there for legislative, and it's always interesting. I do want to make I guess it's a personal statement. I'm always very pleased when I go that our representatives, Brian Manktolo and Pamela Haldming, meet with us in person. It is not someone else that's taking notes and reporting to them. There's always good conversation because they give us input about what they're thinking, how they're working with others. So that's good information to know that we've got somebody out there pitching for us, because rural schools are not in the best position ever. We're better positioned than we were before, but we still need to keep plugging away at getting a little bit more assistance. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. And the person she alluded to at the beginning of that at Fort County was Mr. Poland, who was a presenter at the Fort County School Boards Association meeting. And those of us in attendance were very proud of our superintendent. So thank you for doing that, Mr. Poland.
This isn't Fort County or legislative, but Monday was our BOCES meeting, and Michaela Singleton Aaron, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing she was a presenter, and she had to do it solo because the other two students were ill. She's in the Health Careers Academy, and she just did us proud. She spoke about her growth, and one of the things that happens with health career students, they and the students that are in other majors work together because they're going to be working together after they go on in their own professions, and it helps them to understand how they can collaborate. So it's a wonderful opportunity. She was impressed.
Thank you, Linda. The handbook committee had planned to meet, but due to weather, we had to cancel. So after the meeting, maybe we can try to get together and reschedule. John, anything from audit? No. Travis, anything from safety? Tina, anything from personnel and negotiations?
Not right now.
All right. Or the communication ad hoc?
We continue to have our Board of Ed activities published, letting the community know, have an awareness of what we're doing, other than these meetings.
Good. Shelley, anything from policy?
Just the 6 policies that we have recommended for first read for this week.
Okay, thank you. That, at this time, the board is going to go into executive session, and then we'll return to continue with the agenda and the consent agenda. So I need a motion, please, for the board to go into executive session to discuss the employment history of specific employees. Motion? John and Travis. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. we have returned and we are back in session. Back on the agenda, we're at page 2, the consent agenda. A motion, please, to approve the consent agenda. Linda and Tina, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda? Motion is carried. Turning to page 6, board member requests and comments and discussion. Linda has something to report.
Actually, at our last meeting, I did hand out information about the upcoming in 2026 bicentennial for the 4 towns that comprise our district. And the town historians, I gave you the information from them, and it lists the things that there would be a need to have use of our facilities for some of the events that occur. And some of them are really geared towards students learning about things and so on. So I didn't bring it up for a vote last month because you need to have time to look into it, decide if that's something that would be something we can do.
I don't think we need a vote. It's really operational and up to the superintendent, isn't it, to approve? I mean, we can give consensus, but I don't think it's a voting issue.
With respect to the participation and whether it's something that we can support as a school district, I think that that's something we will support wholeheartedly. Yep,
Okay,
I know
good.
that there's variety of suggestions that are out there, and I'll work with you and the committee, and we'll figure out what we can do that's manageable. I know they've talked about some, what is it, a 5K? I'm not a runner. Is it a
Well-
5K on the weekend and some different activities?
Duke Mitchell and
Yep.
Jeff Washburn have worked on that. We actually had a meeting last night when I got back, but they were talking about, they're doing a lot of different things so that youth and teams, like double teams, and they have a lot of different things that they would probably use the track for.
Yeah, we just have to, we have to figure out what we can actually incorporate and then make it manageable bites. But I think it's a great idea for our students. I know that the history jamboree type of concept where students would contribute dioramas and actual artifacts was discussed, and I think that that local history is very good. So yeah, I do believe that we can support that.
And I think the historians are working on developing something that could be a presentation in middle school, high school, elementary school that's age appropriate
Yeah.
and so on, that kids could enjoy and learn about history too.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
But by March 15th, they would need some dates in terms of use of track and that. They certainly want to work around whatever schedule there is, but that would be occurring in June, which I think most of the use of the track or things, most of the seasons are over at that point.
Yeah, I
So
think the
hopefully it
one
wouldn't be a
question
problem.
that I received with respect to dates was really like, what does the spring break look like for the school year? So those things, we don't have a finalized schedule for next year yet. So it's something that we'll present to you to give you some ideas as to what we can do, and we'll get it to as close as possible to the actual date.
Okay.
Okay.
BOCES approved the calendar on Monday, so that should be available soon.
Yeah, they gave us ours. Our draft is just a little bit different because they don't typically start the Tuesday after Labor Day. So I know I have a draft on my desk, but I didn't get a chance to look at it, and we'll certainly look and get back to you for sure. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks. I wasn't sure about the vote, if there were any legal, so I told them that I would present it.
I think, from the liability and the things of that nature, like you said, as long as the board has consensus to move forward, and I think it's a good thing for our students to participate in, we'll support it. But there will be some things like insurance waivers and things of that nature for the running because it could be for a variety of people that we will have to ask people to sign off on a waiver. Not to be oppositional to them, but just from the legal standpoint to protect our district. Yep.
And they've dealt with that before. I'm sure they have that available to be used, so thank you.
You bet.
Our next meeting is on the 27th. This one is going to be at BOCE's in Williamson, right? Is it that at 1 o'clock? Tell me
So
the time.
right now, we're slated to have a board tour, right? So I know the Wayne Career and Tech Center is something that the board has expressed interest in the past. So I've arranged for you, similar to the previous stops that we've had within our district to visit our programs, I've arranged it with the BOCE superintendent that our Board of Education could actually go to Wayne Tech and Career Center, take a tour, visit some of our students that are in the programs, and look at the offerings. I don't think we have to visit all of them, but what I would love for some of our students to do is tour some of our board members. I'd like a presentation, hit a few spots and have a presentation from Shannon Brown, who's the Director of Career and Tech Education, and possibly Lisa Mead, who's their Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, present to the board on the career and tech pathway for people. And then I would like to, have the culinary students provide us with lunch. And then at the end of the day, I would like to have any formal business offerings or any workshop offerings that we would like to conduct to happen right there. And I don't envision it being a lengthy meeting, but I think it's good for us, just like we're visiting our campuses here, to visit other programs that our students are involved in, so that the board, when asked to make difficult financial decisions, understands the implications or the benefits of those decisions.
Are you saying then that that's not really a board meeting?
The board meeting would likely happen right after. I'm just waiting on confirmation for time. The board meeting would happen there as well.
At what time?
At BOCE's. I'm anticipating by the end of the tour, the end of the workshop, that we would probably be looking at like a 3 o'clock or possibly a 4 o'clock board meeting. But I have to finalize the time, but it'd be right there, one-stop shopping, right in their conference room. I know Tina St. John is excited to take the tour and get the road show going. So she, David, and Lisa will be broadcasting rather from there. Tina, I think, is ambitious, so she wants to get the format all laid out before the end of next week. And I can assure you that we'll work to have that happen.
Okay.
But it'll be an early session, because I don't want people traveling up and down 104 late at night, but I believe as early as we possibly can. So I would envision at most lunch, tour, couple hours worth of time, and then go right into a board, either workshop or business meeting.
Okay.
And if you went to the legislative breakfast, the culinary students really have great food.
Yes, yes. Anyone else have anything? I want to thank Tina for the Valentine gift. Thank you.
It took an hour up there. I was there and I thought they were so I bought them.
That was nice of you. Thank you.
For the budget workshop, we had put tentative for April 3rd.
Yeah.
4 o'clock work for everyone for that day, so we can finalize that one.
March, April 3rd. That's a Thursday at 1 o'clock? 4 o'clock. Okay. That's not our regular board meeting.
No, right.
No, that's the workshop.
That's the
Just-
budget workshop.
So then there would be a board meeting on the 10th?
Yes.
Anyway. Okay. 4 o'clock, okay. That's in April.
That's what we did last year.
I think that's worked well for us the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully, February. let's see, we have a, okay, that's on the board meeting. That's, Barbosi's thing means you can, that, of course, only John and me are old enough to go to the m- senior citizen musical thing, so we can't do that. Well, I don't know, you're still kind of a young
one
thing.
Who has signed into their evaluation stuff? You have? Okay. I was just a little friendly reminder, I guess, that that's something we need to create.
I only sent the email to remind you that you all should have received an email from the super eval system back in December.
And that should have
That
included
was giving you
everything.
your username and a generic password. Then once you logged in, you had to create your own password.
And if we didn't or can't find it,
We'll get you another.
I'll look and see if I
Could
can
you
So it
just
doesn't, like, get me
resend
out of
those
having to do
out,
it.
Tina?
What's that?
Could you resend that,
I'll have to
that
look to
one
see,
out?
yeah. I'll have to see how that works, yes.
Okay. Because if something came to me from somebody that isn't you,
It actually came from super
I
eval
probably
system.
ignored it.
Yeah.
Yeah. December 13. Okay, thanks, Leslie. All right. Anything else? Any other good news?
We did have good news.
Here it is.
We do have good news. The X, or whatever they call it now, Facebook, had the Future Business Leaders of America from the high school. Were highlighted in a picture of the whole group of them at a presentation. And Marcus got first in accounting and second in something else I didn't write down. And a girl named Lily got fourth place. But the group looked very professional. And I think they probably learned a lot of information by attending that.
Good, good.
I know my son also really loved the trip to the Golisano. He loved that concept and the feel of it and came back really impressed with the facility. He already knows where he wants to go to college, but he's like, it was tempting, so it was good.
Good, good. Yeah, Duke announced that the sectionals, they came in second by seconds. But they did very well with the indoor track, yeah. And that they had a lot of personal record breaking. He said there was one record they've been chasing for 20 years, they finally broke, so.
I wish they would publish the times in the newspaper. First, second place doesn't mean anything in track. Tell me how fast they were.
Right, it was just seconds that they were away, split seconds away from first. So, okay. Hearing nothing else, a motion please to adjourn. Leslie and Tina, all in favor? We are.
I got one more.